head that way for three runs.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Play Like a Jet Zone. We're on the road here in New Hampshire, but this baby can go on the road. So we're here for Play Like a Jet Zone, previewing the New York Jets Arizona Cardinals game. Got the team has no name. It's representing the fantasy football, which at least that part has been fun for the New York Jets so far this season as we're getting ready here for Jets Cardinals here on Sunday. There was a thought that maybe this game couldn't happen with a potential COVID potential situation with the New York Jets, but it ended up being a false positive. Thank goodness to all of us who wanted to watch a Jets play. Not everyone wanted to, so you can kind of understand from that perspective. But nonetheless, this is the New Hampshire studios. This baby's on the road for just 1 week only for this Jets versus Cardinals game. Thanks for everybody for joining us. First off, I do want to give a couple of shout outs, and feel free if you're joining us on the live stream, drop some comments here in the chat, and we'll be able to bring that if you can. All right, we're sponsored by two things. First off, this beautiful banner, customized and personalized behind me, is El Chapo of Flags on Facebook. That is Edward Delgado. He's got a great business. Again, just go on Facebook and search El Chapo of Flags for custom flags, for fan caves, tailgates, or hell, even these YouTube live shows as well. So make sure you show your support. The cheapest prices around with the best quality. A proud sponsor of Play Like a Jet. So one more sponsor I do want to give a shout out to. It's a local delicacy back where I'm from in Oswego, New York. It's Greene's Oswego award-winning chicken wing sauce. And for information, all you have to do is text them. Here's the number, 315-406-8081. Again, 315-406-8081 for more information. They got great sauces like El Diablo, garlic parmesan, bee sting, and so many more. Again, by supporting this sponsor, the number is also in the YouTube description below. Text them for more information. You want some wing sauces, you want to know prices, you want to know anything, just send them a text and tell them we sent you. Again, it's a great sponsor of this show. Support local during these trying times. They can even ship those wing sauces to you wherever you are in the world listening in. So I want to give a shout out to them. So thank you very much. All right, let's get into this pregame show here for Jets versus Cardinals. And there's a lot to get into. I think the injury report is a great place, to start. One of the big failures for the New York Jets this offseason was the wide receiver position. Not only do they only draft one guy, Denzel Mims, who unfortunately we just haven't been able to get a good look at because he got injured in training camp and he's been injured throughout this entire process. So we haven't been able to see Denzel Mims. He hasn't played a game yet. So Denzel Mims was kind of has been a wash so far in terms of the draft exposure. And in a draft that, quite frankly, was so rich, guys like Laviska Shenault and second-rounders, first-rounders, KJ Hamler, Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, CeeDee Lamb, who I loved, and he's exceptional for my dad's Dallas Cowboys. Again, it's just been kind of a bummer from that perspective. Joe Douglas bet on upside. Rashad Perriman. He's doubtful for this game. He's been a dud. And guess the guy they passed up on, Robbie Anderson, a.k.a. Sun God. He exploded and has exploded so far this season for the Carolina Panthers. I'll be honest, it surprised me with the weapons they had in Curtis Samuel and DJ Moore. I assumed Robbie Anderson would be exactly what he was with the Jets, an occasional deep threat. But he's been more than that, 28 receptions, 377 yards, and he revealed in an interview this week with Josina Anderson that leaving the Jets was a tough call, and he also said, I want to make this clear, him being Robbie Anderson, he didn't turn down any extra money from any other team. He said he would have been crazy to, which seems to confirm the 2-year, $20 million offer he got from the Carolina Panthers was the best offer he received on the market. And that would have been very reasonable for the Jets to dip into their pockets and help out their young quarterback in Sam Darnold. They chose not to. I will be honest, and I'll admit when I'm wrong. I thought Robbie Anderson was a bit of a one-trick pony, but apparently he's proven in Carolina he's more than that when given and provided the opportunity. Obviously, the Jets, if they could go back, I think that's one certainly they would change, and they should have outbid the Carolina Panthers, and that's been Joe Douglas' biggest mistake thus far. But I also want to turn around on the other side of the coin. And sure, the Robbie Anderson thing has been an utter failure, and it's been an utter failure for Sam Darnold, the development of this offense, Adam Gase, and everybody included to have that mistake. But I got to give credit where credit belongs. George Fant, right tackle from the Seattle Seahawks, when he was signed, not a lot of optimism. A guy who was athletic, not a lot of career starts, very inexperienced from that. A lot of people said, oof, big mistake, because guys like Jack Conklin were out there that were at a primo price, a primo position, and primo age. It seemed like a perfect marriage between the Jack Conklin. That deal never came to fruition. But here's the thing. Jack Conklin's been injured this year for the Cleveland Browns. George Fant, while he did miss one game with a concussion, he has been stellar. He has been exceptional. And he could be a building block for the future on the offensive line. Quite frankly, Mekhi Becton and George Fant at the offensive tackle positions have been a top 10 tackle tandem in the NFL, and it's been remarkably a surprise, because I'm going to be honest, did not see that one coming, and it's been a pleasant surprise. So George Fant, whoop, way to go, Joe Douglas. That move is great. But on the other side of the coin, Breshad Perriman has been a dud and a half. And to be honest, I didn't really have high expectations for Breshad Perriman coming in. He's a former first-round bust of Baltimore. He did have a nice little pop in Tampa, but I didn't really have high expectations. I didn't, I don't know what I really expected. I'm not sure what you Jet fans really expected, quite frankly, in these kind of situations. So to me, that one didn't really work out. But again, Joe Douglas has not been perfect. He's a guy that a lot of us should believe in with the 6-year contract. He's going to be here. He will survive Adam Gase. It won't be the other way around. So Joe Douglas is here to stay. He's made some right moves. He's made some wrong moves. And I think it's important to address both to give that context. Now, obviously, the leading storyline in this game is no Sam Darnold. As we saw in our Week 4 pregame show, that Thursday Night Football game well over a week ago, Sam Darnold got slammed onto the turf. At first, we're concerned. We're like, oh, boy, this could be a long-term injury, perhaps. Sam Darnold broke his collarbone. That's what Troy Aikman was speculating on air about the injury to Sam Darnold, and that potentially that could have knocked him out for the season, but he ended up coming back in that game. Apparently, though, we assumed that, oh, man, everything must be good. Apparently, we underrated the adrenaline, and we underrated the pain injection shot he likely got in the bowels of MetLife Stadium. So, unfortunately, it looks like Sam Darnold, he is 100% out for this game. He could be out for next week's game as well, but they did not put him on IR, so they expect him back, obviously, earlier than 3 weeks. So, a little positive, a little negative, which means we will be seeing Joe Flacco. But before we get to Joe Flacco, who we'll get to in just a minute, Mekhi Becton also not expected to play in this game. Becton and Sam Darnold are supposed to be pillars of consistency and pillars of young players on this team that the team is supposed to build around for the future. So, again, the short-term approach here should be thrown out the window. It's all about long-term for Mekhi Becton. Short-term for Sam Darnold, this is his 7th missed game out of 37 opportunities. The rest of this year, obviously, there's no playoffs in the future. The Jets are 0-4. We'll tell you about a stat later. They're trying to avoid being 0-5 for the 3rd time in franchise history. We'll go back to those other 2 instances in just a little bit. But the rest of this season is, what is Sam Darnold? Is he the guy or is he not the guy? And every game like this one that he doesn't play in, it's one more a game that we don't see, and it's more murky water on Darnold's future with the green and white, which obviously is something I didn't wish I would be saying at this point here in Week 5 of the 2020 season. I was hoping we would say, wow, look at all these progressions and jumps that Sam Darnold is making. Unfortunately, we've not been able to embrace that or enjoy that. So every game he misses, his future gets cloudier and cloudier with the New York Jets, which means it is Joe Flacco time, and he will be making his first start with the Jets. He did play in a couple of snaps in the Thursday Night Football game temporarily while to the locker room and then came back out. Joe Flacco is an experienced backup, and there's a reason the Jets brought him in. Here's a fun fact. The Jets have had Sam Darnold in 6 games in his first 2 seasons. In those 2 seasons, they were 0-6. They've never won a game that Darnold has not started over the last couple of years. Joe Flacco was brought in to be that guy, that if Darnold got hurt, an experienced veteran backup could come in and hold the fort, stay afloat, not be a Luke Falk and completely your offense goes from 0 to 60, or vice versa, rather. Here's the facts, though. Joe Flacco isn't great. When he won the Super Bowl and had that magical playoff run with the Baltimore Ravens, that was cool. That was immortal. He will forever be remembered for that. But since that point, he's been trash. He's sucked. He's not been very good. But the fact of the matter is, he's one of the better backup quarterbacks in this league purely off credentials. the Super Bowl, the experience, the starts. Again, not everyone has that kind of backup quarterback on their team. So quite frankly, the Jets are in a very fortunate position from that standpoint to have a quarterback of that magnitude on the team. We'll see what he provides this offense and how much different this offense looks, because Sam Darnold is a guy who's mobile, gets out of the pocket, makes things happen. Joe Flacco, on the other hand, he has the mobility of a parked car. Okay, we're going from black to white, A to Z here. There's a lot of shifting in terms of the types of quarterbacks we're going to be seeing in this game from the games that we saw previously when Darnold gets on the move, and that's perhaps where he's best. So no Sam Darnold in this game. We will see Joe Flacco, and that's what we'll see. We'll also see some more players coming back from injury. We'll talk about that in just a second. Now, here's the problem. The Jets are 0-4. They stink. They have a horrible point differential, by far the worst in the league. They're obviously not a talented football team. But there's something else you may not know. They're an undisciplined football team. Here are some of the numbers. Through the first quarter of the season, the New York Jets are the number 2 in the league in most defensive penalties, 19 accepted. And quite frankly, the Jets have been labeled cheap shot artists and teams that are play dirty and do dirty things to players, and the penalties certainly back that up. And guess what? Officials pay attention to that. If the Jets, as they have in the last couple of weeks, taken some cheap shots and dirty hits, not only will the refs not call the game fairly, they'll start hypercritical on the Jets being a little bit more trigger happy with those penalties. And on the other side, like the Sam Darnold slam, that should have been a penalty. Not only was it not a penalty, it also wasn't a fine. Several Jets players were fined for all their hits and sacks in that Thursday night Broncos game, totaling over $50,000. But the hit on Sam Darnold was not fined and was not penalized. I think a lot of what plays into that, quite frankly, is the fact that the Jets have been playing dirty and they're not getting it called both ways. So refs scout teams just the way teams scout refs. So something to keep in mind, certainly. And the Greg Williams effect seems to be rubbing off. And it was great last year, not so great in year 2. That's also a sad trend with Greg Williams in his last couple of NFL stops. And I've brought this up on the show before, but where the blank is Christopher Herndon? I'm wearing my shirt today, so, every week I try to wear a different piece of Jets memorabilia or different Jets paraphernalia here on the show, because I like showing you guys kind of inside my fandom and also kind of pre-gaming and doing our post-game recaps and things of that nature, so you see a little bit more. This shirt is A Team Has No Name. Every year in fantasy football, I combine some sort of Jets thing with my fantasy football team, and that's my fantasy football team name in all the leagues that I'm in. Over the years, I've had Hey Darnold, and then I also get a customized shirt of whatever I end up picking or making up. And this one, A Team Has No Name. I'm a huge Game of Thrones fan, actually rewatching that. But again, we can keep that on a Game of Thrones podcast, not a Jets one here. But A Team Has No Name is my fantasy team. And speaking of fantasy teams, I told you guys that Chris Herndon would be a superstar. And I thought he had the talent to be one of the best tight ends in the league, but quite frankly, he's been a dud. He has 11 catches, 74 yards, and a big donut for touchdowns so far this season. And hell, there were whispers this week from people I was talking to that the shifting for Herndon at tight end to Ryan Griffin is starting to shift. And to me, that's god-awful. And it's perhaps one of the most confounding things about this Jets team. That's saying something, because there's a lot of confounding things about this Jets team. So that's the thing that really bothers me, really grinds my gears, so to speak, is Chris Herndon is talented. The Jets have been maligned by injuries, whether it's Le'Veon Bell, who we'll talk about in a second, Denzel Mims, Brashad Perriman, Chris Hogan, Jamison Crowder, blah, 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 blah. With all these injuries, first off, even with a fully healthy team, you would have thought the Jets would say, you know what, let's get Chris Herndon the ball. He's talented. Let's figure it out. But they didn't. And then when all the injuries happen, you're like, well, obviously they will have no choice but to throw it to Chris Herndon, right? No. And they haven't. But here's the thing. I'm not just going to blame the Jets coaching staff, Adam Gase, Sam Darnold, or whoever for not getting Chris Herndon the ball. Because it's not just on them. It's also on Chris Herndon. He's had some drops. He had a fumble. I mean, Chris Herndon hasn't really done anything to help himself, so to speak, and using a receiving threat just as a blocker seems to be a major waste of talent on this football team that is devoid of that very talent. So to me, I'm very confounded. I'm very confused. I'm very befuddled, quite frankly, with how the Jets have used Chris Herndon, and I'm befuddled with how Herndon has marginalized his opportunities to make big plays and make something happen. So to me, that has been one of the most terrible things to watch this Jets season. There's been plenty of terrible things that have come to the forefront. And I brought him up, so let's talk about him. Welcome back, Le'Veon Bell. That's right, the former All-Pro of the Pittsburgh Steelers is back for the New York Jets. Week 1, he pulled his hamstring against the Buffalo Bills, and hopefully he can provide a spark for an offense that ranks 31st in scoring and 31st in yards so far this season, because boy, do they need it. Now, in Le'Veon Bell's absence, so he was injured in Week 1, placed on IR, and he's missed Week 2, 3, and 4, respectively. But the new IR rules allow players to come off after 3 weeks of play, so he is in for the Jets today against the Arizona Cardinals. But while he's been gone, Adam Gase has leaned on his main squeeze, Frank Gore, and it's been atrocious. I'm going to be honest. Frank Gore has received 49 of 64 running back carries while Bell has been out, and Gore's averaged a whopping 3.1 yards per clip. So he has been abysmal. He's a cool locker room guy, but on the field at 37, he's been majorly ineffective for the New York Jets. So that's been certainly an underwhelming factor. And Le'Veon Bell, when he's on the field, and this is why we're so excited, this is why I think a lot of Jet fans were so excited about the potential of Le'Veon Bell. This is a guy who in Pittsburgh obviously had the benefit of a better offensive line and his patient running style of stopping, evaluating, rushing lane jumped out to him and using kind of his football instincts, right? So he doesn't have some of those luxuries with the Jets. Fine. But the way they used him from a versatility standpoint, a play calling standpoint, lining him up in the slot, running him, screens, all kinds of unique ways to get Le'Veon Bell involved in the game, the Jets and Adam Gase have just been bleh. They just haven't found a way to figure it out. And that, to me, has really confused me. It hasn't made sense. So Le'Veon Bell coming back today off of IR, I'd like to see is some creativity in that department. Veteran in there, he should have the threat of the pass as well as a possibility in this one. So what I would like to see a little bit more is Le'Veon Bell's creativity offensively, whether you use him in the slot, whether you even use him as a decoy. Perhaps coming back from the hamstring injuries, maybe he's not going to be 100% full bore. Perhaps as another option, you could just use him in decoy situations with favorable other situations. So that's what I would love to see with Le'Veon Bell. We'll see how much he has in the tank. Adam Gase says he looks like he's in the best shape of his life. Although we hear that all the time with players, it's hard to know when to take that seriously. Speaking of running, the Jets could have Murray. He leads all quarterbacks in rushing this season with 265 yards on the ground. He also has 4 rushing touchdowns, which is 2 more than the entire Jets team has. Bummer. That's true. Kyler Murray, by the way, could be a problem. The last time the Jets faced a mobile quarterback was Week 1 versus Josh Allen, and let's just say it didn't go well. They were able to grumble opportunities. The Jets did absolutely nothing with it, but they were able to create some of those opportunities. That could be something to watch. And another storyline to watch, in my mind, for this game. I talked about it on my Jets Zone podcast. It's right here, the weekly New York Jets audio podcast. It's been going on for the last decade, so make sure you like, subscribe wherever you find your podcast. I had Darren Urban, who works for the Arizona Cardinals, has for the last 20 years, and he told me about an interesting story. You guys may find this interesting, or you may find it nauseating. Nonetheless, I'll tell it here on the show. We were this close for these two coaches that are playing each other today in the Jets-Cardinals game, Cliff Kingsbury on the Cardinals side, Adam Gase on the Jets side. We were close to that being the inverse. Now, I don't know if you guys remember this, but when Adam Gase was relieved from the Miami Dolphins, the first head coaching interview he took was with the Arizona Cardinals, and he was interviewing with the Cardinals for the head coaching position. Now, on the other side, Cliff Kingsbury, who had a lot of college ties, was at Texas Tech, and they jumped over to USC, and he was kind of available. He's a sexy offensive name, and that was the offseason where anyone who knew Sean McVay, his neighbor, his mailman, his brother, sisters, cousins, nephews, gardener, because they knew Sean McVay, they were getting head coaching interviews. This was where offense was sexy. It still is, of course, but the Sean McVay thing has kind of rubbed off a little bit. Anywho, we were this close. Adam Gase was interviewing for the Cardinals job. The Jets locked in an interview with Cliff Kingsbury, and then we all know what ended up happening. The Jets let Cliff Kingsbury walk out the door. He goes to Arizona, and they're having modicums of success. Again, they're in a slump right now. They're on a 2-game losing streak, but again, overall, it's been pretty sexy, pretty saucy. And Adam Gase has been the complete opposite of that. It's been dirty and crappy. But the thing I do want to talk about, kind of with this head coaching thing that could have been this, could have been that, could have been in different places, is the fact of the matter is, if there was a guy I liked, and from all indication from what I heard, the Cliff Kingsbury, when he came to the Jets, he wowed them in the interview process. They were like, wow, this guy seems pretty good. But they let him leave. This is the thing. If I was running a team, I'm not. The only team I'm running is my fantasy football team, and they're doing okay. But nonetheless, if I liked a free agent or a coach or what have you, and they were interviewing with me and they wowed me, I would lock the doors. And I know this sounds like kidnapping, but I would lock the doors and say, hey, man, what do we have to do to get you in? We're blown away. We want you as an ex-head coach. We want you as insert sign free agent. Let's make it happen. Again, there's agents and negotiations and things, but Cliff Kingsbury impressed them, but they let him leave. He went straight to Arizona. They impressed him. They signed him. Boom. It's over. The Jets went, I guess we'll go with Adam Gase, and then we all know how that's worked out. So that's what I don't get. I don't get why the Jets didn't have a more aggressive pursuing of Cliff Kingsbury. Again, it's October 11th and 30 minutes before the Adam Gase, Cliff Kingsbury Cardinals-Jets matchup, and I don't want to play too much revisionist history, but come on, man. That could have been a risk. That could have been a cool danger hire, where obviously a high upside but high risk, and the Jets ended up going safe with their quarterback whisperer, and it's failed miserably. So I did want to bring up that story. Again, it was something I forgot about coming into this Jets-Cardinals week that Darren Urban on Wednesday brought back up to me. I went, wow, forgot about that one. Thanks for making me feel like crap, Darren. And so ultimately, that's how that one kind of made me feel. But it's interesting to kind of see what could be. And we'll get back into another. Let's just get into it now. Here's the thing that I found interesting, and that I interviewed Darren Urban, again, who works for the Arizona Cardinals, about on my podcast. And I want to kind of bring it up here on the show. Is the Cardinals had Josh Rosen. They traded into the top 10 to draft Josh Rosen. They're like, you know what, this guy is our franchise quarterback. And after a year of some starts, they kind of had a crappy team around him, But they said after a year they got rid of the coach at the time and hired Cliff Kingsbury. And Cliff had the number 1 pick. He's like, you know what, I could stick with Rosen, or I could just draft my own guy and trade Rosen. And they end up trading Rosen for a 2nd and a 5th, and they get Kyler Murray, who by all accounts looks like a budding star in this league. And it makes me think, what would the Jets do if they're in the same position? So I asked that of Darren Urban, like, man, what if the Jets have the number 1 pick? And here's the thing. Adam Gase obviously is still the coach of the Jets. That makes a lot of Jet fans upset, myself included. But the earliest, in my mind, he could get fired, now that we're past that one point where he could have in week 4, is the week 11 bye in between those 2 Dolphins games. If the Jets are 0 whatever at the time, 0-10, 0-9 at that time, maybe then he could be fired. But it seems really hard to believe he could be fired before that. And the fact of the matter is this. Nonetheless, if the Jets stink as bad as we think they're going to stink, 0 wins, 1 win, 2 win, 3 win, 4 win, whatever, I think at the end of the day, Adam Gase won't survive that. So obviously there's going to be a new head coach, and there's going to be a GM, Joe Douglas, and a head coach that had no part in Sam Darnold. So you already have that. And they're either going to believe in him or they're not. I think we still have to see the rest of the games that are available in this season, whether you can make that determination, whether you believe in him or not. I don't believe you can make that determination right now. But you have to know one way or another. It can't be in the middle. The middle is the purgatory, and I think I talked about this last week. The middle is the worst place you could be. You either got to know Sam Darnold is a franchise quarterback, or you got to know he's not. The worst possible place you could be is in the middle, not knowing, because then that's when you could pass up on Patrick Mahomes, Deshaun Watson, because that's what happened. The Jets thought they had something in Christian Hackenberg. Obviously, they didn't. He never played a snap for the New York Jets in a regular season game. And they apparently passed on those guys because of their infatuation with Christian Hackenberg. Now, Darnold is not Christian Hackenberg, obviously. But nonetheless, you have to know at the end of the year, there's no excuses. And at this point, There are 12 games left. Now, technically 11 because Darnold's not playing in this one, but 12 games left to find out whether Darnold's the guy. And if he's not the guy, the Jets could pull a Josh Rosen-like situation and trade Sam Darnold. By the way, I do want to bring that up because Adam Schefter had a report this morning. An anonymous GM, I'll read you guys the quote here because I think it's interesting. Here is a quote from an anonymous GM on this Sam Darnold situation saying, quote, I don't think they could get a first-round pick for Sam, but it also depends what he puts on tape the rest of the year. The problem is Darnold is struggling with his accuracy, his durability, so they're in a tough spot. If everyone knows the Jets are taking a quarterback, then they won't get as much back, end quote. But Adam Schefter also said in that same report that the right team could present an opportunity for a first-round pick. You know, one of those teams that are looking for a guy, again, I hate that. I want to be honest with you. I hate that we're even talking about trading Sam Darnold because I think he is special. I think he's an elite talent. But we have to because the Jets stink, and we don't know when we're going to see Darnold back. I would imagine probably in 2 or 3 weeks. I think we'll see him. We're not seeing him in this game. And I think next week looks iffy from the people I've talked to, which means he could be back in what would be that third game. So that's something to watch. But either way, the reason why we're talking about this is because it's a realistic possibility. And some of those teams that potentially make sense, the New Orleans Saints, they have Jameis Winston on a 1-year deal, but they're an NFC team, so you keep them out of the conference if you can. And they're a team that would have a back-end round, first-round pick in theory. The Steelers, another team, I wouldn't like to give them to the AFC. And personally, I kind of hate the Steelers. The 2010-11 AFC Championship game is still always on my mind, so I don't want to hand the Steelers something. Because here's the thing. The most Jets thing that can happen here is Sam Darnold can't do it with the Jets for a lot of obvious reasons that we already discussed. You know, he didn't have enough opportunities. The team around him sucked. And then we deliver him to whatever team, Saints, Steelers, whoever, and then he ends up being a superstar. That will kill me. I will say that will kill me because the Jets haven't had a franchise quarterback in forever, and for them to finally get one and then they just mess it up and fumble it away, it would be the most Jets thing ever. So I really hope that doesn't happen. But if you can so you already have 2 first-round picks this upcoming draft. You have 2 first-round picks in the next upcoming draft. If you're able to move Darnold to get 3 first-round picks in this upcoming draft and then draft like a Trevor Lawrence, you would think that the Jets are in a great position to rebuild and turn this thing around. But again, it's even crappy to talk about because it sucks. But Adam Schefter did say that if the right team presented itself, we'll see. I think that also factors into these last 12, 11 games for Sam Darnold is how does he look? Does he show some pop, some fervor? Not enough for the Jets think he's the franchise quarterback, but enough to intrigue another team potentially. Something certainly to keep an eye out for. What the Jets will be trying to avoid today is their third 0-5 start in franchise history. The other 2 instances were in 1996 and 1980. Let's go most recent first. In 1996, they finished 1-15, and we all know what happened there. And then in 1980, they were 4-12. So they kind of rallied after that 0-5 start to make something happen in those final 11 games, but not much. Here's the thing. If you're going to be bad, you might as well be as bad as you can. I will never root for losses, despite the fact that the Jets are 0-15 or 0-10 or 10-0, whatever. It doesn't matter. Like today, I'm going to be watching this Jets-Cardinals game. I'm going to be rooting for a win. I'm going to be rooting for Joe Flacco to do something. It's not in my being. It's not in my body to say, oh, man, I hope Joe Flacco throws 100 interceptions and we lose by 40 because it's not in my being. So for that reason, I will be rooting for the New York Jets today, as I will every day for the rest of my life. I am in this poisonous, cancerous situation, and I'm in it to win it. I've already been in for so long. There's no getting out now. So that will be interesting to watch for this Jets-Cardinals game coming up today. By the way, the Jets are 0-4, not only on the season, but even 0-4 against the spread this year. They've done absolutely nothing. And on my radio show, the Man Shot Show, Boy Greene, I am sucking in the picks, and again, the Jets draw me in, like, this Broncos game, or the Bills game, they're going to show up, and then they end up fumbling it away, which has been pretty sad, pretty terrible all year long. But nonetheless, this Jets game hopefully is competitive. The Cardinals are on a 2-game losing streak, and as Darren Urban said, quote, this is a must-win game for the Cardinals. They need to find a way, and for the Jets, it's just been a crap show. We'll see if they can kind of rally around Joe Flacco. That's not something I anticipate. I think it will be a closer game than people give it credit for. The last time I looked, the line was, I believe, 7 points in this game, but I think that has likely increased. Nonetheless, we'll keep an eye on this one and see how it goes. Make sure for all you guys that are watching right now and have been watching, hit the subscribe button. This is a weekly New York Jets, your live YouTube show. We're doing pre-games every week. We're doing post-game shows immediately after each of these games. So thank you so much for all the support, everybody. It's been terrific. This has been a brand new project. Shout out to El Chapo of Flags. Shout out to Oswego's award-winning chicken wing sauce, Jabber out there for his contributions to this show. It's been terrific. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you to the fans. Please subscribe and hit that little bell so you can get notifications on all these new YouTube live videos. We'll see you after Jets Cardinals, baby. After this one, go Jets. We'll see you after.